Hello guys, I'm Nasa and the topic I'm presenting to you today is constructing the teaching process from inside out. How pre-service teacher make sense of their perceptions of the teaching of the four skills. Here it's my outline and it includes introduction, data collection and findings. In the introduction, we will see the study, participants, and the context. In data collection, we will check the analysis and how it was carried out. And finally, findings and the discussion. The main objective of this study is to investigate how pre-teachers feel about teaching the four skills and their perceptions about it. Participants and the context. The context is three pre-service teachers of English as a foreign language. They are women and had already been working in the field. They taught in elementary and high schools, being observed for these matters of the study. Also, they are all Brazilians. The experience they had, as I mentioned, is with adult children, homogeneous and heterogeneous groups of students, and the approach they are intended to teach is CLT, Communicative Language Teaching. The formal teacher of the class will be attending to it, and also the pre-service teachers will be observed by a researcher and their former teacher in college. Data collection. In the study, 25 classes or 25 hours from classes were videotaped and recorded and also partially transcribed for the study. Also, 40 hours of discussion sessions and 8 hours of recall session were recorded and all transcribed for analysis. The pre-teachers write 12 classroom observation reports and 25 lesson plans. Also, they carried out 25 self-evaluation reports. The aim of this is by all the data collected, the students can recall their perceptions about their teaching. Findings. The main questions to carry out the study were how do pre-service teachers materialize their perception concerning the teaching of the four skills by an experienced teacher in their pedagogical practice, and how they do respond to their own teaching. We will start with how do pre-service teachers materialize their perceptions concerning the teaching of the four skills by an experienced teacher. First of all, students had to identify the methodology the teachers used to teach English as a foreign language. Also, they have to discover the perceptions they have about how a language class should be or about how a language class should be constructed. What does a foreign language class consist of, and so on. One of the examples that caught my attention was when one of the students was identifying the methodology of the teacher, and he noticed that the professor was using a very grammatical structured class, and also he was using the L1 to explain the grammar, and he accepted that the learners answered with the L1 as well. So students were barely practicing English in the class. I do believe that sometimes we do not agree or we are surprised about some teaching practices. I have not been surprised or disagreed with any teacher practices from the former teacher of the class I'm giving, but I discovered that I don't like some of the activities that are in the textbook. Not because they are bad or anything, but because they are meant for adults and the context of the students is children or teenagers. Well, they are from 10 to 12 years old. So For example, in one of the exercises, they had to learn about food, and the language or the vocabulary that was introduced, it was entries or appetizers, which I did not agree because that language is not used by children or teenagers, not even in their L1. So I decided to adapt the lesson with some language that they will be more familiar with, like desserts or breakfast or meal or dinner or drinks. Besides that, the class is always in English, so students receive input. But how about your classes? Which language is the dominant in your classroom and why? Do your students speak more Spanish or they speak more English? How about you as teacher? Moving on to teaching the four skills and the pedagogical practices, the article mentioned two main points: planning process, that is how to prepare and implement what happens in the classroom, and perceptions and interpretations of the classroom events. In their planning, pre-service teachers presented a very similar lesson plan structure. The main topic of one of them was street children. In the first task, students had to talk about street children and have knowledge about that topic. The second task was designed to review language. Task 3 goal was reading comprehension and get deep into the social topic. And in task 5, students have to make a writing activity about the UNICEF and their work in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The aim was to engage students in problem-solving situations. After finishing the class, the pre-service teacher got some feedback from their supervisor. Some of the points that were highlighted was that one of the teachers focused on students having to discriminate sounds, getting more importance to lower cognitive process rather than the higher cognitive process like inferences or judgments. Another teacher got feedback about her speaking activity because the supervisor commented that there were no sociolinguistic coherence in her activity because she wanted the students to ask questions like who are you and what do you do in a job meeting role play. One point that I would like to mention from the article is that they said that reading comprehension should be promoted through inferences because through reading, learners get to understand and improve their speaking. The fact that learners and teachers were using Portuguese a lot more than English was mentioned several times by the pre-service teachers. So this question came to my mind. Do you think that lack of input affects students' learning? How do pre-teachers respond to their own teaching? The first point to mention is the image of the teacher, which has to be with the performance and behavior they had with the teachers and the students. Their main concerns were that they were very nervous or that the students went ahead of them. But when they got comments from their peers, they discovered that they had some positive points as well, like they gave students feedback or they looked calm even though they were nervous. The second point is theory into practice. All the participants agreed on having a background knowledge about teaching helped them to have confidence and to know what they were doing about their teaching. The third point is teachers' concern, which varied from teacher to teacher. Their main concern was about students not understanding what they were explaining or that they were not participating. Time-wise was another point that they highlight they wanted to improve on, and again students' comprehension and tune timing and how to give students feedback. The point 4 was about teaching management, how to manage specific classroom situations like indiscipline, lack of attention, or motivation. Some of the pre-teachers comment on what they liked of their peers. One of the comments was about how a teacher ignored successfully a bad comment from a student in the back. The point 5 has to be with factors that influence successful results. Here we can appreciate that the main concerns were handling time and the sequence of activities, also how to handle class management and procedures, and how to manage time and students' feedback. They were pretty similar to the factors they wanted to achieve in a lesson. And last but not least, how pre-service teachers perceive the teaching act. The three main points that they consider for the teaching is teachers' performance, planning of classes, and the effect they had on the students. So, what are the teaching thoughts crossing your mind while lesson planning? Are they positive or negative? To conclude, I will mention that all the comments from the participant were that having this teaching experience with a previous knowledge about the theory helped them a lot to improve their teaching, even though all of them said that the teaching process learning was painful and they suffered a lot. Also, the author conclude that pre-teachers learn a lot based on their life experience about their work and of course about their teaching practice supported by theory and observed by a teacher educator. So, bonus question. Do you think that the learning to teach process is difficult or, like the participant mentioned, painful? Tell me about your experience. This is my reference and thank you very much for your attention.